The 1984 NBA draft had the GOAT of all time, the GOAT defender, and the GOAT assister of all time. 2003 had the Miami Heat Big Three, including LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. Meanwhile, 1996 had the most All-Stars with 64 combined appearances. But what actually was the greatest draft class in NBA history? Let's try to find an answer. Firstly, what are the criteria for a good NBA draft? Well, there are many to choose from, like All-Stars, Hall of Famers, championships, MVPs, and so on. But I chose the following three. Individual performance, meaning how good the best players were at their prime. Accolades, meaning all the trophies and awards combined. And depth, meaning how many good or great players the draft featured. Now, with that in mind, let's start by examining the 2009 NBA draft, because it was one of the best ever. It featured players like Steph Curry, James Harden, Blake Griffin, DeMar DeRozan, Jrue Holiday or Tyreke Evans. Pretty stacked, right? Steph Curry, selected 7th, is arguably the greatest player of the draft and raises the ceiling of individual performance by a lot. He's considered the greatest shooter in NBA history, won 4 championships, 2 MVPs, and became an All-Star 9 times. Meanwhile, James Harden is, just like Curry, a lethal scorer who was unguardable in his prime and also won an MVP while leading the league in scoring 3 years in a row. Blake Griffin, who was the first pick, was a franchise player for the Los Angeles Clippers for almost a decade. He is slowed down due to injuries, but in the 2010s was one of the best dunkers ever. Surprises in this draft were Jrue Holiday, who was picked 17th and won a ring with the Milwaukee Bucks in 2021, but also Patrick Beverley, Danny Green and Patty Mills, who was selected late in the second round but turned out great role players for their teams. So was this the best draft ever? No, it wasn't. Steph is one of the best, but not the best player ever. The depth is great, but there are still drafts with more talent, and their combined 34 All-Star appearances, 14 championships and 3 MVPs look pale in comparison to our next drafts. Now we still have to talk about Michael Jordan's, Kobe's and LeBron's draft, as the best draft ever might be among them, so stick until the end. But now let's focus on 1987, as this is also a serious contender and is even better than 2009. Successful players include David Robinson, Scottie Pippen, Reggie Miller, Kevin Johnson and Horace Grant. The headliners of this draft, however, were Robinson and Pippen. Robinson won the MVP award in 1995 and won 2 championships in 1999 and 2003, while being one of the best shot blockers ever and also a force on offense. Pippen was the right hand of Michael Jordan and helped him to win 6 championships with the Bulls. Many people say Jordan wouldn't have won that many rings without him. He was one of the best defenders ever, made 7 All-NBA teams and was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Meanwhile, Reggie Miller was known as the best 3-point shooter ever, until Curry arrived. He made a total of 2,563s, but was most known for his clutch performances, like one time where he scored 8 points in 9 seconds to win his team the game. Conclusively, the 1987 NBA draft has a combined 16 championships and 28 total All-Stars. But this still isn't the best draft in NBA history, as they, for example, had only 1 MVP award, and there are classes with better individual players, more great talents and better accolades. But what are these drafts? Well, one of them is the 2003 NBA draft. Okay, let me ask you something. What do you think about when I mention 2003? In my opinion, the first thought should be that LeBron was drafted that year. But considering great NBA players, this year wasn't just about him. Other talents were Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. And given that all of these guys were top 5 draft picks, we can consider this the best first 5 picks in NBA history. But was it also the best draft? LeBron would go on to have a monstrous career. He won 4 championships, 4 MVP awards and made 19 All-NBA teams and All-Stars, which is the most by any player. And yeah, he's still playing. LeBron is deservedly in the debate for the greatest player of all time, and he gives the 2003 draft one of the highest ceilings possible. Carmelo Anthony never won a championship, but he still was a hell of a player. He's a 10 times All-Star, won a scoring title, and was a dangerous shooter throughout his prime. Now, when it comes to Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, things get funny. Because with LeBron, this draft held all the members to form the Miami Heat Big Three. The team that would dominate for several years, win championships in 2012 and 13, and made LeBron be considered a villain. So, was this the best draft ever? Unfortunately not. Ceiling-wise, this class is superior. The accolades also look pretty decorated with 27 combined championships, 59 All-Star appearances and 4 MVP awards. But this draft lacks depth. The top 5 are great and the rest is alright at best. But there has to be a draft that checks all 3 categories, right? That brings us to our final 2 draft classes. What if I told you that the 1984 NBA draft was the best draft ever? Would you agree? The leading players were Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley and John Stockton. With Jordan, Hakeem and Barkley all in the top 5, this makes us rethink the best first 5 draft picks in NBA history. Michael Jordan himself brings the 1984 draft on this list, as he is arguably the most accomplished individual player the NBA has ever seen. In his career he won 6 championships, 5 MVPs, 1 Defensive Player of the Year, was a 10-time scoring champion and an All-Star 14 times. The funny thing is that Jordan was drafted 3rd, but make no mistake, because the number 1 pick, Hakeem Olajuwon, also showed greatness. He won 2 championships, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards and was a 12-time All-Star. Meanwhile, Charles Barkley and John Stockton lack a championship ring in their resume, but they were still considered icons of the game, with Barkley being one of the best small forwards and Stockton setting the record for the most assists in NBA history, with 15,806. In their collective careers, Jordan, Stockton, Barkley and Olajuwon combined for 47 All-Star games, 45 All-NBA teams, 23 All-Defensive teams, 10 scoring titles, 9 assist titles, 5 steal titles, 3 rebound titles, 3 block titles, 8 NBA championships and 7 MVPs. Whew, this is more than most draft classes have combined. So was this the best draft class ever? Maybe. Ceiling wise, it is. No class has produced more leaders in categories than this. Accolades wise, this is also hard to beat. But the depth of this class is surmountable. Stick with me here, because in my opinion the 1996 NBA draft is the best class in NBA history. It can almost match the 1984 class ceiling, while having more combined accolades and a bigger depth. The talents of this draft were Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Steve Nash, Ray Allen, Stephon Marbury, Shareef Abdur-Rahim, Antoine Walker, Jermaine O'Neal, Peja Stojakovic and Zydrunas Ilgauskas. Damn, that was many names. Kobe Bryant, the best player of this draft, won 5 championships, 2 scoring titles, 1 MVP and became an All-Star 18 times. So yeah, the Black Mamba gives this class a pretty high ceiling. Meanwhile, Steve Nash and Allen Iverson also won MVPs and despite never winning championships were absolute legends. Steve Nash is one of the greatest passers and always made his teammates better, while Iverson was one of the best scorers and the only one who could cross over Michael Jordan. Furthermore, Ray Allen was a 3-point specialist and made the 2nd most threes in NBA history. We could also count Ben Wallace to this draft, as he went undrafted that year. He won 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, which is the most by any player. These are just some of the great players in this draft. 1996 combines for 19 championships, 3 different MVPs and 64 All-Star appearances. This is unbeaten. And despite 2003 and 1984 having better individual players with LeBron James and Michael Jordan, this quantity of talent is unprecedented. Therefore, we can consider the 1996 NBA draft the best draft class in NBA history. If you enjoy this type of content, you could help me by liking and subscribing. So now you know about the best draft in the NBA, but would you believe me if I told you that LeBron isn't even the scoring leader? Or that Stephen Curry almost has the worst 3-point record ever? If you want to know more, check out this video. Just click on the screen, I'll see you there.